Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's special episode of the Maritime Morning Brief, brought to you by the Marine Exchange of Puget Sound. I am your host, Sarah, and I'm here with Executive Director Patrick Gallagher.
Hey, everybody.
And today we are here with Cyrus. Can you pronounce your last name for me?
Cyrus Donato. Really, truly a pleasure to be here.
Great. Cyrus Donato. We're really glad to have you. Seasoned mariner, veteran Coast Guard officer, and now an inspector with the International Transport Workers Federation. Yeah?
Perfect. And I would just say I thank you guys for everything you do. You're really a fundamental aspect of our, really the integrity of our marine transportation system. And I don't think that a lot of people really give you the praise for everything you do to keep the global commerce, to facilitate global commerce. So as a person on the ground, I would just really appreciate everything you guys do. So
Thanks, Cyrus.
We really appreciate that.
We're off to a really good start. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that. No, that's cool. Yeah, we were talking earlier before we started recording about sort of how so many things in this industry are hidden away. And I feel like the Marine Exchange a lot of times is hidden within that hidden industry. So I appreciate you saying that and recognizing it. So I'm just going to get right into this. Why are people being exploited on fishing vessels?
Okay, jumping right into
This is a new technique we're trying.
I mean, I would say that kind of it's a whole series of problems, lack of regulatory oversight. I mean, these vessels are able to bring these guys in via Canada, via Mexico, and then they operate off of the west coast of Washington. And this is completely legal. And then they don't have any status. They don't have any visa status. And actually, the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952 specifically excludes foreign fishermen from getting a seafaring visa. That's the C1D visa. The transit is the C1, and then the D is the seafaring visa. So, of course, if there's no oversight and you're physically forced to remain on board your ship, you're going to get exploited. And they can't step off. It's a violation of law. I mean, they make these guys do transfer between vessels offshore in kayaks in deep Pacific Ocean state. They make them put their stuff in bags and swim between vessels. I mean, last year there was a vessel that exploded in Hawaii in April, and crew member died. And other crew members were severely maimed, where they lost their fingers, they lost their ability to speak, and they just they ship them back. They just ship them back to Indonesia. I think that there is really serious systemic issues that are going on within the foreign fishing vessels. I mean, this was an issue in Hawaii. They kind of showed up en masse in Honolulu in 1990, I think 1989, 1990, and then. No one and everyone kind of knew, there's these 800 fishermen in Hawaii in this sort of purgatory status where they have to be confined to their pier. But no one really knew that was going on in Washington until there were some fishermen that made some complaints because they weren't getting paid.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is they have really robust contracts in the Philippines that are governed by the Philippines Overseas Employment Agency, the POEA. And it very clearly outlines you're supposed to make contributions to your Filipino health, to your Filipino Social Security, that you're supposed to maintain work rest hours, that you're supposed to get paid this guaranteed amount every month, and that there's supposed to be remittances that go back home. And none of those elements were being met essentially.
When I got stationed in Hawaii, Chief of Response, my final tour, I had never heard of this. And then when I got there, it felt like common knowledge. It's oh yeah, the fishermen who never leave. And I'm what are you talking about? And I went down there and saw it, and I was shocked.
Yeah, you walked that pier by Nico's Pier 19?
I believe that's right.
Yeah. There's a few different piers that they're there, but it's walking to Scotland in this third world country where the guys are defecating in buckets, washing their laundry in buckets. I mean, I talked to one fisherman in Hawaii who was there for 4 years. He was trapped there for 4 years, just being passed between vessels. And the pressure, the economic pressure, is because it's so expensive to get them there. They need to, they can't go through Hawaii, so they have to go through Mexico or American Samoa, which uniquely has different immigration laws than the mainland U.S. And actually, Hawaii is actually closer to Mexico.
The shocking part is that we know about it. But it feels year after year like a choice. Like do you see what I'm saying? Like when I discovered it, it's like, so you're telling me that everybody knows, but we just accept it?
I mean, they tried to do legislation in 2018.
I saw
Senator
that, yeah.
Hirono tried to introduce a bill
That never made it out of committee.
that never made it out of committee. Exactly. So people are aware there was a huge impetus. There was a lot of reporting. 2018, there was a really serious issue in San Francisco on the Sea Queen 2 with labor exploitation, human trafficking. That case never was brought. It was a civil case. It was settled out of court. The fishermen in that case received what's called T visas, which are visas that are given that you're a recognized victim of human trafficking. But there's the U.S. Attorney's Office is reticent to bring charges, because really, I mean, it's almost like the systems in place like are creating these mechanisms of exploitation. Mm-hmm. If your own immigration law is a cause of the exploitation, then how can you bring charges? At least that's like my sort of commentary on it.
It's a feature, not a bug. That's that's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's insanity. I mean, and these aren't like, I get it on the deep draft commercial ships. Like, okay, you're here for a week, or maybe 3-4 days, and you have a full range of crew amenities. From the ITF's perspective, yeah, certainly, like, they need to have access to go ashore, and we like that's how the rest of the world works. But when fishing vessels are here for months, 3, 4, 5 months to the dock, like, that's ridiculous.
So you mentioned the ITF. Why don't you explain what the ITF is and does and your role?
Yeah, so I work for a global union federation based out of London, the International Transport Workers Federation. We represent 20 million workers globally in different sectors. There's maritime, aviation, inland navigation, road transport, tourism. So there's a bunch of different sectors, but I'm just I work for basically the maritime section, and there's a group of what are called ITF inspectors, 140 ports globally, throughout Europe, Australia, Africa, Canada, South America, Europe, of course.
How did you get roped into that?
I went to the Coast Guard Academy and did 5 years with the Coast Guard, 2 years on a ship, 3 years in marine inspections in New Orleans, and then shifted into the reserves. And I did 8 years working for a vessel registry. And then I was recruited for this role, and I'm really excited to be here. It's really very rewarding every day to basically support foreign seafarers that are in distress, and that's really what our roles. We provide education, we help them know their rights, and it's like particularly important in the United States because the United States isn't signatory to a major international convention, the Maritime Labor Convention, that for the rest of the world is a party to, and this is basically the Seafarers' Bill of Rights. It's one of the major conventions: MARPOL, SOLAS, STCW. SOLAS is safety of life at sea, MARPOL marine pollution, STCW governs training and watchkeeping, but MLC governs the labor aspects, and the United States has failed to sign that convention. So that creates a huge void in regulatory oversight. So while my colleagues in Canada are able to sort of pass everything off to the regulators there, we don't necessarily have that same luxury here in the U.S. So a lot of times we're doing what I would say is more like federal regulatory work over the oversight of contractual issues, essentially.
Okay.
How do we fix it?
Yeah.
I think since the 1990s, the U.S. has been really reticent to sign international conventions. It's really become a political issue. I think another unique thing is the Maritime Labor Convention sits at the International Labor Organization versus the International Maritime Organization, where the other instruments are. And so I think there's a little bit more cozier relationship at the IMO than there is necessarily at the ILO. So advocacy, I think it creates a huge problem. I think that the regulators want to be more involved. They just don't necessarily have the teeth that they need to give them the go ahead to regulate. And I was just talking with one of my colleagues, the Masters, Mates, and Pilots Association is really distressed about violations of work rest hours on board these ships, and they're not, the regulators aren't enforcing work rest hours, because it's under both STCW and MLC, but it's a problem.
So what does your day look like? What does a typical day for you look like?
So I'm going out on a ship. So after this interview, I'm going to go to the grain terminal at Pier 86, LDC. I'm going to go on board. I'm going to review their crew contracts, make sure that they're getting paid in accordance with their collective bargaining agreement, making sure they're getting paid overtime, making sure like holidays are being earmarked as overtime, making sure that their embarkation and disembarkation month are correctly prorated, that they're getting travel days. Those are all a lot of mistakes that I really typically see. Sometimes we see really egregious issues where there's a lack of pay. I mean, because at the end of the day, like the port here is interfacing with international companies and companies that maybe operate in the rest of the world don't necessarily operate to the high standards that there are in the United States, essentially. So
we read about a particularly egregious case here in Washington State in Westport where you were featured. I saw you in there. I saw a quote by you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that case and sort of how it resolved?
Yeah, so some family members reached out to the ITF for assistance, and that's what we can do is like provide education on contracts. I mean, their contracts are like the contracts I see every single day in the deep draft world, where it sort of outlines all these different wage elements. So I went out there and they said, "Oh wow," I was like pretty horrified. I was like, "Okay, like show me like documentation that you guys have been paid." Like, oh, we haven't been paid in months. And I was like, oh, that's a problem. Really, the local Filipino community really rallied and basically blasted this off to everyone. So, federal law enforcement got involved. Mm-hmm. They basically, picked these guys up. They picked up 6 of them. And there was another 18 who didn't want to leave because they were so afraid of blacklisting. That's a serious issue in the Philippines, is if you like raise an issue, you're going to get blacklisted, so you won't have any future employment. Right. I mean, it's all part of these mechanisms that create this sense of impressment. And so these other 18 guys, the company sent them back home, but these other 6, they stayed. And this happened in 2023, and they're still here, all with status to work, and they're all working, and hopefully there will be some resolution going forward. But
they're still here?
Yeah, they're still here, yeah.
So you said earlier, like people don't think that this happens in Washington, but it is. And we've heard this on a few issues, like other sexual assault, human rights type things, that this is happening in Washington. And so why are we like still, because like Patrick said, we all seem to know about it and everyone's kind of accepted, but we don't talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's this concept that this very famous reporter calls the outlaw ocean, Ian Urbina. Sort of like out of sight, like you're not in the normal interfacing where there's police every day to govern your activities. Like you have none of that sort of oversight in the ocean, and I think in a lot of ways the marine transportation system is removed from a lot of the normal governmental systems that are in place, essentially. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And I would also say, like, working with my European colleagues or my Australian colleagues or my Canadian colleagues, like, in a lot of ways, like, the U.S. does not have a lot of the normal, like, regulations that exist.
Really?
Yeah. Labor
Do tell,
regulations.
do tell.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That part I didn't know how it compared internationally. That's not something I was aware of. It's
Oh,
worse.
oh, in the U.S.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, we had recently an issue with some exploitation on like it's a very complicated situation.
Yeah, I
but
understand.
and like some people in the UK were in town from a seafarer center doing an exchange, and they were just like horrified. Like how can this happen? Like in the U.S. And in that case, it was a very strange case where it was a church was like operating a vessel almost akin to the issues with that Scientology cruise ship, where then the crew wasn't getting paid everything. I mean, I went there, I offered them resources, but I guess if they're choosing that, then that becomes a problem.
Yeah. And I realize you can't talk about everything, and there's sensitive things and people involved, but I think what we're feeling and hearing is it's not as bright and sunshiny as people think. Like I think a lot about externalities and how we don't really price these things in, almost like we have an obsession with price, the cheap goods. So long as it's cheap, we're okay with it. So as long as we don't have to pay more than $14.99 for sushi, then that's good. We don't really want to think about it too much. And I believe me, I understand. I get we have enough to think about. But I think about sort of, I guess, the high cost of cheap things in terms of what it really takes to get that food on your plate, to get those jeans in the store, stuff like that. So there's no question in there. This is just what I'm thinking about as you're speaking. It's just
Yeah, I mean, we call that like supply chain accountability, human rights, due diligence. Those are all like substantive issues to understand our supply chain. I mean, that's why like sushi is like very very cheap for how like a labor in intense labor. I mean, these like fishermen salaries are like $700 a month. You're gonna tell me you can't pay someone $700 a month? I mean, like while like a U.S. fisherman salary is like $7,000, $10,000 a month. So I mean, like that's what I say. Like there's just all these like unique Swiss cheese. I mean, when I talked to the federal law enforcement officers, like they could not believe like the Swiss cheese of regulations that these guys are able to get through, because it's even though they're fishing in the EEZ, it's deep pelagic fishing, so like the crewing requirements, Jones Act are waived, where you don't have to have a U.S. crew, you don't have to have the 25%.
right.
You're supposed to just have a U.S. master, but then they don't even do that.
Yeah.
They have the paper captain situation where you'll have some other guy who's like materially in charge, and then
Another thing I encountered I'd never heard of in Hawaii.
yeah.
They call me. We've got a paper captain case. I'm like, what's that? What is that? And then I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? But no, it happens. They won't even do that.
Well, and the industry is so comfortable using that term.
For the viewers, who don't know what that is, can we please explain what that is?
Paper captain. So Jones Act is protectionist legislation where you have to have U.S. flag vessels have to have a certain crew makeup, and where they operate and how they operate is regulated so that we can have U.S. citizens and crew these things, and we can. This is very brief and crude, and we build U.S. flag vessels in the United States, et cetera. So that's a really poor description of the Jones Act. But what we're talking about, paper captain, is for where these vessels are fishing, they're required to have a U.S. licensed master, and they wouldn't even do that. They would just get sort of a proxy captain, and then have like a U.S. citizen who has no idea what he's doing. And so we would get on board, and you would have to figure it out. It becomes obvious when you ask the captain is like, who's the captain? It's like, oh, it's Cyrus, and Cyrus has never, sailed a day in his life. It's just someone they picked up, and it's like, okay, well, tell us how this equipment works, and no idea, and we just go through this whole thing, and they're like, this guy is definitely not the captain, and if he is, doesn't belong here at all. And it's hard to prove. It's hard. But I remember we would get on these cases. It would take us a long time. We'd end up with the State Department, et cetera. And the part of the Coast Guard that always frustrated me was I would see these things, initiate them, respond, and then have no idea what happens. And I think that's kind of what you're doing, at least partially, is, well, what happens next? And what I'm starting to learn is not a lot. Is it just sort of like, well, what are we going to do?
Well, in my case, I do have to appreciate the federal law enforcement involved, the federal law enforcement agencies. I mean, they really put work to investigate this. They went, they went to travel to the Philippines. They did all this. There was a court case that I was a party to in the Philippines that this case was involved. They still haven't come out with a ruling. But I mean, I think for a criminal case, right, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and so that becomes such a high threshold, right? And the U.S. attorney only has so limited resources, right. And there's like whatever politics there that they need to prioritize their time or whatever. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So speaking of politics. What's going on in your political world?
Oh yeah,
anything?
Big announcement here. The Maritime Morning Brief. Yes, I'm running for the Tacoma Port Commission for open seat number 4.
All right.
I've had a lot of positive response. Really, some strong endorsements. I would say like more industry people need to be put themselves forward for these positions.
Yeah.
I hope you would one day run for the Seattle Port Commission, with your knowledge and everything.
Can you imagine
that? So, and I think there's some issues within the port that need to be addressed. There's some ethics issues going on, and really focus on creating family wage living jobs.
Yeah.
Environmental remediation. Ensuring that projects are using the project labor agreement, the development. There's a new tribal terminal, Puyallup Tribe.
Yeah, it's exciting
for that to come to fruition. The Maritime Skills Center.
Yeah,
those are really important avenues that the port is engaged in. So we can make those come to fruition. But I really wanted to provide the Pierce County someone who aligns with their values.
Awesome.
And I'm not necessarily sure the opposition is presenting that choice. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like how frustrating it is when you get a ballot and there's like no choices on there. So
right.
we're going to give people choices, and so that I'm really excited about it. Really had the opportunity to meet. I just toured a machinist shop yesterday in the Port of Tacoma, and really was excited about all the jobs he's creating. He's expanding, how he has new contracts with the Navy to build doors for like engine control room door, essentially for I'm not sure what the specific naval vessel is, but just how he's hiring more people. So there's just a lot of economic opportunity there.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some substantive issues within the Northwest Seaport Alliance. I mean, so both the Port of Tacoma and the Port of Seattle commissioners sit on the joint Northwest Seaport Alliance that governs containerized cargo, so they don't compete with each other.
Right.
But
15 years, right? They've been doing this for 15 years, I believe.
2015, so 10 years.
Gotcha. Maybe that's what I was messing up. Yeah. No, that's right. 2015.
Yeah. So I think that, and it's interesting because the last election cycle, there was some clamoring from the Tacoma side to end that relationship. Mm-hmm. And probably this election cycle, because Tacoma's run so well that more and more tonnage is shifting down to Tacoma from Seattle. I mean, you see the closure of Terminal 30 here, issues with the city taking housing, as well as Pier 46 being used for federal resources.
Yeah.
And you're losing that waterfront. That's like waterfront that's going to be lost. That will never be recovered. And
Right.
so more and more ships are going to Seattle or going to Tacoma. And so what we don't want to happen is the end of that relationship. We really want to be in partnership with Seattle, and then look at opportunities to be in partnership with Everett too. Everett.
Amen.
Ever since COVID,
Yeah.
Everett has really picked up a
it's impressive.
massive market share. Yeah.
And I was just in Bellingham a few weeks ago, and wow, the investment in Bellingham is amazing. The way they're doing it and handling it and thinking about, I mean, they've got an entire port philosophy that the city has embraced.
Well, there's the Bellingham cold storage,
right?
That I'm familiar with, and then
they just finished electrification project where they got some merit grants. That's like ready to go. It looks good. They reinforced the pier. They did stormwater remediation work. They did the cold storage. They're importing gravel from Canada. It's like, wow, it's a lot. And then the way they described it was a 60-year vision, and they're 20 years into it. So that's the way they think and act, which I thought was quite impressive. It made a really deep impression on me just going up there and touring Bellingham.
Yeah, well, who's really kicking our butt is Vancouver, Canada.
Oh,
if you look right now,
I heard about that too.
I've heard about that a few times.
Well, there's like maybe 6 deep draft vessels
right
in Seattle, Tacoma. Maybe like another. I think I saw another like 3 at Anchorage outside of Anacortes, and maybe 1 at Ferndale. But like there's like 30 in Vancouver. That's not counting like Nanaimo or New Westminster or Deltaport or even Prince Rupert.
Yeah,
like those are. I mean, they are.
We a message we try and push out as much as we possibly can, and I think it's pretty well received. But the question is always, well, what do we do about it? We've been out invested by Canadians at least 2 to 1. And when you look at high growth ports, like Houston is a good example. Houston's 6 to 1 to our port investment. And what I think happened was we forgot that the state is competing with other states. And I think it's just been neglect for a long time. Not to say there's not great projects, great initiatives, and of course awesome people, but if you're not getting that support from the state that says, "Oh, we're going to prioritize our ports as a driver of great jobs and economic success, and the fact that we can do it better than almost anybody can, and we've got these amazing deep water ports that are naturally protected." All these things that work in our favor are not well supported by the state. And that's not something you just, drop $1 billion and we need a state strategy, in my opinion. We like the ports do what they can, and they put it down to the terminal level. But if you don't have that overhead support and it's like incongruent, what are you going to do? Especially, new legislation comes out that makes it even more difficult. And you create another incentive to turn left instead of turn right. And I think this is our theme is it's hidden. I think it's just been taken for granted. There's ships. And what do the ships do? I don't know. But, everything just shows up. It's great. That's not how other states think about it. Go to Virginia. No, their governor knows the depth of water he knows where the anchor. I mean, it's amazing. Everywhere I go, all the places that are kicking our asses, they're governors, like their leaders, senior leaders, know, and it's a pillar. So the stuff you're talking about with the United States not participating in this, and there's a Swiss cheese that, and this is bizarre to me, but it feels like everywhere I bump around and turn and run it, it's like this is a theme in the United States. Like we have taken this for granted, like hardcore. Like at least 50, 60, 80 years. We just sort of like, we got this. But no, you have to pay a lot more attention to this if you want it to work.
Yeah, I mean, especially here, it's like such a rich maritime history,
It
maritime
made this
community.
Yeah. There would be no Seattle. There would be no Tacoma. It made this state. Yeah. So we're trying. But I have to give it to the ports though. And I don't spend nearly enough time in Tacoma. I really don't. And every time I go there, every time I was just there yesterday, I'm blown away by what's happening there, the amount of hustle, the amount of pride. We need to help these people, not get in their way. We need to do the opposite. So I love hearing what you're saying, especially, you mentioned workforce. You mentioned workforce development. That's
this
on
industry
everyone's
is
mind.
hurting so much. I mean, there's just such a shortage in the maritime, in the maritime industry, and I think there's some recent headlines about issues at the Merchant Marine Academy.
Yeah,
ongoing. And
just saw that. Yeah.
I was talking to my colleagues, and really, they say like this. The issue is like all those Merchant Marine Academy people need to go into the marine industry and not be commissioned. Get snatched up by like the Army or the Air Force. Yeah,
right.
That was a conversation we were having driving up. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, there needs to be a unifying, governing strategic plan for the nation, for the state's ports.
Yeah.
Instead of everyone sort of fending for themselves.
Right.
And there's a lot of development in Vancouver, Washington. Your Marine Exchange just governs Puget Sound and also Grays Harbor.
Right. Yeah, that's those are our friendly neighbors in Portland, the Merchants Exchange.
Yeah, they
shout out to the Merchants Exchange.
And they have like all the. I mean, it's like a mini Mississippi River there.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
The amount of grain. I mean, that's like another thing people don't realize.
Oh no.
This country is the breadbasket for the U.S. They just pump out so many soybeans and corn, and the Asian markets just soak it up like a sponge. We can't pump out enough grain.
Yeah.
And then the Columbia River has so many of those grain terminals. Puget Sound, we just have the two, Temco and Tacoma, and then as well as LDC 86, which they do a phenomenal job, like feeding the world. It's just really heartwarming to see that level of industry and all what's takes to make that process happen.
So Cyrus, you do a lot. You do a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you do, to de-stress a little bit? Like, what's your jam? Or do you?
I go running with my son. I have a 2-year-old son in the Bob stroller, and he really likes it when it's very bouncy there. So, there's a beautiful park in Tacoma, Point Defiance.
Oh, yeah.
And enjoy running there. So I guess that's my core sort of de-stress.
Good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That sounds pretty good. All right. Mm-hmm. So something we've been asking people, we actually have two things. So one is what makes you kind of rage, and then what's something where we all just kind of need to chill out, like it's okay.
Something that makes me rage.
Yeah, something
like
where
makes
you're
me
like,
angry.
Yes. Yeah, like what gets you?
When I see terminals blatantly violate U.S. law. They came out with a U.S. law in 2021 or 2022 that they wrote in 33 CFR, like seafarers, appropriately credentialed seafarers have a right to go ashore. And so when I see them denying that or denying access to the good folks at the Seattle Seafarer Center, where they also specifically wrote in the law, you have a right to go aboard to like engage them, and all they're trying to do is like really do good work and giving them rides to shops to that makes my like blood boil. Like, and not only that is like our obviously the amazing folks at the U.S. Coast Guard wrote a specific letter saying like this is the law, like these are the list of people you have to gain outlet access, and then they still like deny them, and it's frustrating. And because at the end of the day, all these guys want to do is go pump money into our local economy. That's like one thing that story needs to be told is the amount of money that the foreign seafarers pump into getting really high quality goods at a very cheap price. That you can't buy these things in Ukraine or Myanmar or India. So it's the Apple products, the computers at Best Buy. Even the garments or clothes, TJ Maxx, they love the TJ Maxx. So that story needs to be told. So I guess that's the rage. Kind of tied it back to my job too. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
and then something else that makes you chill out.
Now, what's something that we all sort of need to chill out? Like, it's okay.
Gosh, I really don't necessarily have one off the top of my head.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You can also substitute a recommendation. You were recommended at one point too by the
Seattle
Center.
Seafarer Center. And let me just
talked about
say
you.
the Seattle Seafarer Center is just absolutely phenomenal. Like what they're doing to solve problems, like crew member. I mean, we had issues where crew members are getting their faces blasted off, and they need tear duct reconstructive surgery from like the water cannons that they use to clean the cargo holds. And like unscrupulous companies are trying to like fly these guys in the middle of the night, and so like just working with them to intervene that process, because at the end of the day, like Harbor View Medical Center is like the best medical care really in the world.
Yeah, level 1 trauma.
So, and then, now we're dealing issues with CBP, and they're being so onerous on not giving the guys access. So there's a functional problem, right? Crew members are coming in and then they don't have a visa. And this has been a problem since COVID, where companies kind of figured out they can save a lot of money by not getting visas, the C1D visa. And then when they get injured or having a medical emergency,
They can't.
then in the past they would do humanitarian parole
Right.
pretty much for any case. Now, like, they're refusing to do that. It's a huge problem nationally. And my perspective is like, if you're in the United States and you're working in the United States, like, you need to have access to like medical care. I mean, I had situations where we got the doctor, they wrote a letter like, this person needs to go to the doctor, and they said, nope, you until next port. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So that's a frustration, yeah. And that's a problem. Like the rest of the world, like seafarers have a right to go ashore, but in the United States, really since September 11th, they've made it very difficult. You have to get a visa beforehand. Prior to September 11th, right? Prior to the internet, like, you didn't even know if you were going to go to Canada or to the U.S. to pick up grain, essentially. So you would just basically show up and then pay your whatever it was, $20 a crew member to get like a visa on the spot.
Right.
And it's kind of asinine anyways, because they screen all of these guys anyways. And if someone was so egregious,
Right.
they would put armed guards on board the vessel, essentially. So if you're already screening the people and they're already, in essence, cleared, like, let them get access. Like, it's all really, for the ITF's perspective, it's a mental health issue. Like, you need that respite from like being at sea for months. Like, let them go ashore, let them go shopping, let them, walk around. It's just kind of not. It's just not a priority, in their minds, essentially. So
Wow, you're doing you're doing great things. It must be. I just try and think about what your life must be like. It must be taxing and frustrating at times to look at something that is so systemically weird. And yet try and do your best work in there. So I really appreciate what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Maybe that's why I don't have anything to
Yeah,
relax.
we're like, no,
I don't have anything to relax
don't
about.
relax.
Yeah, I can't relax.
No,
Yeah.
the other thing on the happier side of that is you're doing all of this hard work. So what is the piece that like brings you joy, that makes you want to keep going, that makes you come back to work, and like whatever it is?
I mean, just like getting I make it a pride to like find money that's owed these guys, and I make them pay it on board. So, and then for someone who's like a cadet, like, there's another issue that we deal with is like exploitation of cadets, and like they're only getting paid $200 a month, and then being like, oh, well, he worked overtime, and then like, oh, you owe him, $700 for these last 3 months, and then make him pay the guy $700 there. see his eyes like light up, you know, that's like really, really rewarding. Or like, you know, dealing with the sexual assault issues for women seafarers on cruise ships, supporting them, or you know, being able to represent them and seeing that there's resolution. You know, they'll reach out to me, and then I kind of know what players to reach out to, and then they get like immediate, like basically protection, and like the issue is like resolved. So like being able to resolve that like really systemic issues.
That's great.
That's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for
thank
doing
you.
All of that.
Yeah, we appreciate what you're doing out there. We know it can't be easy, and trying to protect people who can't protect themselves in an industry where they truly deserve it, and I can feel that from you. So yeah, thank you for that work. That's fantastic.
It's truly a pleasure, absolute pleasure to be here, and appreciate everything you guys, of course, do.
Yeah.
So thanks.
All right.
On that note, how can people get in touch with you if they want to keep up with you or want to contact you, learn more, all of the things?
You know, I think I'm big on LinkedIn.
Great.
I can give my email. It's a .uk email, so don't forget to add that at the end. Some people forget to do that. It's Donato, DONATO _ Cyrus, CYRUS @itf.org.uk.
Great.
Okay.
And we'll link the ITF in all of the episode things so
Yeah,
listeners can
yeah. Show
and
notes.
learn more
We'll
as well.
put the link in there.
All right.
All
I think
right.
with that, we're going to close out. Thank you so much for joining us, Cyrus. This was really great. We were really glad to have you. And we appreciate all of our listeners for joining us on today's special episode of the Maritime Morning Brief. We look forward to seeing you all again bright and early tomorrow morning.